Hi, my name is Bruce Ramus. I make art with light. I communicate with light. I'm not unique. We all communicate with light. We are made of light. I can see it in your eyes, your skin, your hair. If you cut us open, you would see that we emit light. Now, I know it sounds a bit far-fetched, but I've seen it. Okay, I needed a really big microscope to see that wavelength, but it was there at a cellular level. It's called autofluorescence. We do emit light. We are light. We understand light so deeply, whether it's a porch light welcoming us home, a bedside light to read by, or a sunset or sunrise. It's felt by all of us equally. It shapes us. It colors what we see. It defines the rhythm of our days. Through it, we flourish. Without it, we wither. Light does not discriminate. Poor, wealthy, young or old, indigenous or immigrant. Light is an experience we all share. It is given freely. It's an energy we feel in our bodies. And that feeling transcends culture, it transcends a lived experience, and it connects us all. Light is in our language, of course. If we think a person is intelligent, they are considered bright, or even brilliant. If not, we might think be dim. We might think they'd be a bit dim. A face can be beaming. A pregnant woman can glow. And when we come to understand something, we have seen the light. And we may even become enlightened. So this vocabulary indicates how we experience each other, how we connect. If you didn't have words, I'd still know who you are by the light you give. The light is the media we all express through. It is how we communicate. I started to become aware of this back when I was designing and directing rock concerts. I was working with a band called U2, and it predated the use of cell phones. Some of you may remember. So if the audience wished to engage, to show their support, become part of the light, if you will, they would hold up a lighter. Do you remember that? In the northern hemisphere, or colder climates, they would just stand there with their lighter glowing. It was beautiful. Tens of thousands of people with their lighter glowing. Gorgeous. But in the warmer countries, they don't hold it static. They flick their lighter to the beat. And in stadiums, it allows you to see the sound waves across the space. Here's an example. This is U2, Mexico City, 80,000 people. This is engagement. This is public engagement. Communication. And this is happening in our cities. This was the start of my awareness of what is now called media architecture. Let's break it down. Media, the main means of mass communication. Architecture, the complex or carefully designed structure of something. So, could be said, we're building a structure of light for us all to communicate. That's what media architecture is to me. And I see this structure of light differently to most structures. I see it as a way of dematerializing our cities, making them more formless, lighter, more like who we truly are. The built form, of course, can be beautiful, elegant, full of light, like these. This is the Louvre in Abu Dhabi. Beautiful. But it is often dense and hard, not at our scale. It's difficult to engage with. So when we add artificial light to a facade or a lobby or a public space, it creates a sense that it is multidimensional, or that the form can now move, or indeed that the building's no longer there at all. Here's an example, one of our pieces. This is 888 Collins Street in Melbourne. It's often called the Weather Building. The light is the media. It communicates space. It deconstructs form. And we gradually become aware of the difference between dense and light, between form and formless, between gray, hard surfaces and soft, luminous textures. We've known this innately forever. It is a reawakened awareness. It's us realizing we can claim the spaces we live in, realizing we want to create spaces that reflect who we are and have less of those spaces that exploit who we are not. These are our cities. We can choose the quality of our light, how we communicate. So we say how our cities feel. Quality of light. We can have this, or this, or we can have this. Times Square, New York City. This to me is old thinking. Last century. Television at a civic scale. Very little space in here. Or London. Now most people I know don't want to look at ads. We change the channel. We move on. Because that doesn't really reflect who we are. Or Tokyo. Shinjuku. So if these are our cities, surely we have the right to choose how our cities communicate, what they say about us. In these examples, who is choosing what our cities say now? Does this speak for you or me? So maybe we need to change the policy that allows this. So this awareness of whose narrative is being communicated, it's growing. We're at a time now where visual literacy is high, perhaps higher than ever. We all have lights in our pockets now. We have them in the back seats of our cars. We have them at the petrol stations. And we choose what we watch and when we want to watch it. So that literacy, or that awareness, it can bring forth a media architecture that starts to shape a different narrative. And that will change the way our cities feel. And it will, over time, translate into public policy. These narratives, these stories, they're seen in architecture, they're seen in public spaces, and they're told by developers and builders, architects, by governments, religious leaders, and commercial operators. It's not new, of course. This is Bernini, 17th century. It's integrated into architecture. It has a narrative. This is media architecture. Or Notre Dame, 12th century. Sagrada Familia, 18th century. All media architecture. Sainte-Chapelle, 13th century. Even more recently, Buffalo, New York. Dallas, Texas. They're everywhere. All of these have the qualities of media architecture. They are light, they're using light, they're using a narrative to get a message across, to bring that light and color and narrative into our spaces. These narratives, however, are not yours to shape. These are the corporations of the past. They define the narrative, just like with today's advertising screens. Now, I'm not anti-corporation, don't get me wrong. I run a small one myself. But the predominant narrative of our cities should be that of its citizens. There are more modern images and narratives that can look like this, or this. And of course, artists shape our awareness of our space. James Turrell. Dan Rosegard. All extraordinary stories told through media architecture. In a bank in Denver. Wells Fargo. Or in a public square in Seoul. All of these use light and color and narrative in our cities. It's not just in the buildings, of course. It's in the way we use light, perceive light. How are our cities commonly lit? What is it communicating? Sometimes it's communicating clearly. Traffic lights, for example. We all agree. If the light's colored green, we go. And if it's red, we let others go. Very collaborative. Other times, I don't think the way we light spaces is communicating clearly at all. Let's look at street lighting. We want it so we can see at night. We can feel safe. So we mainly use lights from overhead and flood the ground. Melbourne street lights, for example. Here's some examples of my city. But overhead lights cast shadows under our eyes. They make us look sinister. Does that communicate safety? Not to me. Here's a little sequence to show you what I'm talking about. You can see that overlit creates a sinister looking person. Nice 3/4 light. They look like a movie star. I think we should all be walking around looking like movie stars. After dark, there's more space. We see differently. So how do we see our cities? How do we experience them at night? What are they communicating? What do they say about us? What does the light you use say about you? Whatever you wish to call it. Specialist lighting, feature lighting, digital facades, architainment, media architecture has been in your city for a long time. If we want to be heard and seen, and that is filtering into all of these disciplines, what is it about our light and our narrative? Sharing what we see and who we are in the collective expressions of our cities. Of course, that question is more important than the answer. This growing awareness, this light, it's a paradigm shift in urban design. It's an expansive shift towards a more habitable future, a people-centered future. We want our cities to create space, not take up space. And this is the potential of media architecture. This is the possibility I see. Now, I want to show some examples of work we've done over the past 12 years that indicates how I see media architecture. Some are simple and subtle, some are large and more performative. All are my attempts to create space and communicate with light. I started with temporary commissions. The first was at the Sydney Opera House, where I was a design mentor for a little while, and they asked me to do projections on the sails. And I'd had some experience doing that, and it was before it was sort of popular and ubiquitous in our cities. I got together with Brian Eno, who did the content in 2009, and Laurie Anderson, who did it in 2010. A company called Electric Canvas, who were brilliant at technically achieving these types of installations. From one side was 450 meters away, the other 650 meters. And I started to learn how slow-moving content, a rhythm and a cadence that was more like a human moves, not like a video moves, would allow people to linger. It was less imposing on the community. That was a big lesson for me. I got asked by Federation Square in Melbourne to do a community artwork, something I had not really done before. So I've got some rental equipment and I built a pyramid and I covered it with light. And then I asked the community to show up and contribute, to make lanterns that we would put on the structure. So they did, in their hundreds of thousands over 5 weeks, and they would make these lanterns, they'd hand them up to the riggers, and they'd come back at night and watch their work light up. So over 5 weeks we got about 750,000 people through there. It was beautiful, very beautiful community contribution to art. And they asked me again, they asked me to come back and do something different, a bit more sculptural. So I did this, the helix tree. And with this piece, the community could sing to it and it would light up in response to their voice. So the louder they sung, the brighter it got. The pitch they sung at changed the color. It's really simple interaction and really engaging. And so a choir would show up every night and sing it to life. And the public would just come and sing to a tree of light. Amazing. I didn't really imagine that would work as well as it did. It was very beautiful. And then we moved into more permanent works. This first one, Darling Quarter, is a work we call Luminous. It's on the Commonwealth Bank headquarters, 2 beautifully curving buildings designed by FJMT in Sydney. And we put a light in each of the windows and made the world's largest low-resolution video screen. It's been running every night since 2012, and it's interactive. So you can select a color, change the color. These kids are playing Pong on the building. I think that's really significant. And it speaks to what I referred to earlier, where the people who live in these cities, they get to choose what color their buildings are. Then we did a facade on a retail shopping center. This is Winter Garden in Brisbane. It's about 90 meters long, about 25 meters tall. This is only 25 pixels wide, a low resolution facade. But despite that low resolution, you can still make out images on this, whether it's a swinging girl or a Ferris wheel, or even children dancing on the screen. Your brain makes up the gaps in the resolution. That makes you an active viewer, not passive. You're not being numbed. We also do larger works such as Stadia. This is Amy Park in Melbourne. And you can see how the roof moves, how the building itself expresses the anticipation of game time is approaching, then the game, and after the game it settles down to a resting state. And so the whole city knows what is happening in this building, unlike most of the buildings in the city. So some are like the ones I've shown you, which are quite elaborate, quite big, and some are more simple, architectural design. This is 345 George Street. Subtle, delicate, interior lighting. But some are more performative. This is on the outside of a casino in the Gold Coast. On one entrance, outside the entrance, are a stand of palm trees. So we skinned them with light and mapped them really accurately and made that into a video screen. And you can see the trees are different shapes and different sizes, gaps in between them. You can see the tops of the palm trees are also involved in the video. And so by rights, you shouldn't be able to see an image on there or recognize a kind of emotion. But as the people start walking across the trees, you see them. So your brain has made up that image. If I pause it, they're not even there. I make it move again, and you see the image. On the front side of the building is a projection piece, and again, half the image isn't even there. The people inside the building don't see any light. It's just on the balconies. Yet you still see the people dancing on the beach. You see the turtle. You see the surfers, the fireworks. All of this, you're an integral part of the piece. So same company, different location in Sydney, the Star. They asked us to do a huge entry statement, something that was immersive, so that when people walked in, they just felt sort of enveloped in light, and it had some kind of visceral sensation. So we designed this. We designed a wraparound, embracing 8K video screen. And in the middle of it is a cascading, programmable, cylindrical water feature. And you can see lights embedded in the walls and in the ceilings, all coming from the same source. And we created these shows on the hour where the water dances and moves. And there's projections happening on the water, and there's lasers. It's just gear for days. Really beautiful, really fun. And it also has times of elegance where it quietens down and it shows the content that is the texture of Sydney, the light and the movement of Sydney, how it feels to be here. Whether it's underwater on Coogee Beach, overhead Bondi Beach, beautiful time lapse through sunset of Sydney. So many different aspects of Sydney, and it's very gentle, very calming. And then on the hour we go back to the water shows. Then they asked us to do, can you go to the next level? So of course we can. And Lunar New Year was coming up, and so we designed a show with props, these beautiful lanterns, and aerialists choreographed a whole aerialist piece with music and these hand-painted videos. Beautiful use of space, and it would draw people into this. They would linger for the 10 minutes that the show was on, and then they'd move on to whatever they're doing. Some are smaller, public space works, a bit outdoor. This one in Singapore called Songket, based on a pattern of a Malay textile. And these are permanent kiosks selling food and beverage. And just on the outside, it gently moves through light patterns, some low res, some high res, behind glass. It just is a subtle way of activating the space. It doesn't demand on the people, it doesn't impose. It just gently moves through and activates this space consistently, gently. Very beautiful. Or this one in Melbourne, Paran Square. These are called the pipes. And these are slender, beautiful pipes, like organ pipes. And there's 4 groves of them at the threshold of this park. They have image LED in them, and they have speakers and cameras, and they just frame the threshold of the park. As people enter them, they hear these soundscapes and feel this movement that happens in this new park. And synergy. This, we got asked for a digital painting, they said. And so we built their painting, and then we developed a piece that connected to the tides, because this location was at where the river meets the sea in Melbourne. And so we connected this piece to real-time tide data so that the ebb and flow of the tide could be seen in the painting. So the white parts of the land and the blue is the water, and as the tides rise, so the blue overtakes the land. This also reflects a kind of ebb and flow of people into this commercial building. And so that plays every day. It's different every day because of the tides, because of the light, etc. So that's another way we do connect works to their environmental site conditions. This is a great example of this media architecture, which is 888 Collins, sometimes called the Weather Building, which I referred to earlier. This is a 100% solar-powered building, and we established a weather station on the roof, and we gather the real-time weather from the site. And that data drives the lights. So the temperature determines the color Any moisture in the air makes the lights move vertically. Wind makes the lights move in a sort of more turbulent way. So these lights, none of them can be seen within this building. It's a residential building. And if you look at the buildings across the way, there is no glare from these lights. So that is specifically designed to do that. The light doesn't cross the footpath. We think about those things when we design media architecture. Some of the pieces we do are larger. There's this one in Yagan Square in Perth, a new public space, where we have a canopy, a low-resolution interactive canopy that people walk through and walk under, and it just brings a sort of texture of light to the space. But we also have a high-res cylinder, and this is where the community starts to tell their stories. We build a curatorial program to encourage university students, emerging artists, cultural groups, to develop content that plays on these public screens. It makes it socially sustainable. It makes the citizens part of the expression of their city. That's what I'm talking about. And finally, this piece, which is Optus Stadium. Optus Stadium obviously is an award-winning best stadium in the world by many accounts. And we were asked, can we make it move? Can we make something creative happen? We did, and we unified the stadium. Creative lighting and the functional lighting and the video screens all in one expression to make this building move, to make the building talk and say, this is what's happening inside, and tell the city, come see us, this is what's happening. These are the teams that are playing. This is when a goal is scored. Amazing. I'm now being asked to do more permanent shows across, you might say, between my experience in large-scale theatrics and permanent architectural installations, the result of which you'll see coming over the next year or so. So those are some of our projects, and those are some of my thoughts and feelings about my work and how I see what we as a studio do. So what does it say about me? Well, I want to allow or encourage where I live to be lighter, gentler, more multidimensional. So media architecture is a way I communicate with light, who I am, and how I wish to live. That is my take. I'm an expert, like everyone here. I'm also a student, like everyone here. IES is a relatively small organization in global terms, and perhaps in comparison to the big firms that are shaping our cities. But here we hold the seed, the opening through which we all will make a very large difference over the next 50 to 100 years. We have just begun, and this is really very exciting. Thanks for your time. Hope you enjoyed the webinar. Look forward to hearing from you.